Mythology, or dead religions from the past, do not get enough attention in modern society. Hey Slavic Vikings, and welcome to an analysis of the dead religions. Personally, I am not religious, but I do believe that there is a lot of truth in religious texts. Not literal truth, but metaphorical truth. And I genuinely believe that is the way the writers of the Bible, for example, meant for these texts to be interpreted in a non-literal way. I know half of you are already angry about what I said in this video, because when speaking about religious stuff, people automatically get very passionate, since this stuff is usually very personal. However, I would like to emphasize that everything in this video is just an opinion, and you do not have to take this personally. It's fine, we can disagree and you can still watch and enjoy the video. So let's move on. While I will be approaching the next examples from a non-religious standpoint, I am still fascinated by the metaphorical truths and the profound human experiences reflected in these texts, from the Quran to the Vedas. I have nothing personal against religion, just how my personal belief is atheism. I do not care if you interpret religions literally. I respect all religions, and I often exclaim that I wish I was religious, since I see the practical value, individually and societally, of following virtuous sets of guidelines. That being the reason I practice Stoicism, my personal religion if you will. And for all these aforementioned reasons, I treat mythology in the same way as I do religion. I do not see religion as more true than mythology. In 2000 years, it's my belief that our modern day religions will be treated as mythology, just as how we treat ancient mythology nowadays. Before finally covering specific mythologies, I would like to talk a bit on how ancient intellectuals interpreted God and spirituality in a totally different way. It's hard to imagine for a postmodernistic mind this more abstract view on God in ancient times, but please give it a chance. Plato, in his work The Republic, presents the idea of the form of the good, an abstract, perfect reality that guides the moral and metaphysical order of the universe. This concept, while not rejecting the gods, suggested a more transcendent, formless understanding of divinity, distinct from the traditional Olympian gods. In Eastern philosophies, the interpretation of God often transcends the personal deity model. The Upanishads, ancient Indian texts, introduced the concept of Brahman, an all-encompassing, formless cosmic spirit. The Chandogya Upanishad declares, Tat Tvam Asi, or that thou art, suggesting that the individual soul, or Atman, and the universe spirit, the previously described Brahman, are one and the same thing. For the goated Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, God was synonymous with the rational order of nature. Aurelius wrote in his legendary Meditations, and I quote, "Everything is interwoven, and the web is holy. None of its parts are unconnected. They are composed harmoniously, and together they compose the world." End quote. This reflects the pantheistic view, where God is seen in the laws and harmony of nature itself. I genuinely believe that God had a truly different inherent meaning in the eyes of these philosophers. Just how the philosophy of ethics in those ancient times had a totally different meaning from modern times. Ethics used to cover a much wider range of how to live a virtuous life in general, instead of just basic morality of what's good or bad. You must pardon me for my long introduction, and let's finally go into the real video. Long before the structured pantheons of gods and goddesses, the most ancient form of religion was likely animism. Animism is based on the belief that all things, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, everything, possesses a spiritual essence or soul. It's thought to have arisen during the Paleolithic period, as evidenced by cave paintings and ritualistic artifacts found across Europe and Africa. However, it is worth mentioning that animists do exist nowadays. Shamanism, closely linked to animism, involves practices where designed individuals, or shamans, enter trance-like states to interact with the spirit world, often for healing or divination purposes. Honestly, just because of how boring it is, animism is probably my least favorite type of religion. It's not their fault though. It's understandable that the first oldest known religion is the most simple and naturalistic. There is very little metaphorical messagery behind these beliefs, but it's still important to know the origin of all religions. Origin of religions, kind of rhymes. At the end of the day, all religions try to explain nature, and animism just takes it a bit too literally. So let's move on to paganism. Paganism is the most covered type of mythology, so I'll not be giving it a lot of attention and instead focus on one short example. But which example, you may ask? According to the nature of my channel, I have decided to focus on Slavic paganism. Before talking about Slavic paganism, let me talk a bit about the different types of mythology that I'll be covering. So, animism, the mythology that I covered already, it is mostly focused with spirituality and the spiritual essence in everything. You might have noticed that with the modern trend of distancing yourself from the church and more set base of rules in a religion, more and more people are more spiritual and would describe themselves as spiritual rather than adhering to a specific church, for example. This is more close to ancient animism, I would say, than the other types I'm about to describe. For the sake of simplicity and brevity of this video, the other two categories I'll be covering is monotheistic mythology and polytheistic. Polytheistic, in other words, is paganism. You might have already figured out that paganism or polytheistic religions focus on belief in many gods, while monotheistic religions in one specific god. Slavic paganism was inherently polytheistic, with a set of important gods and goddesses, each governing different aspects of the natural world and human life. Deities like Perun, the god of thunder and lightning, and interesting enough, Piorun, which is similar to the word Perun, means thunder in Polish, and Veles, god of earth, water, and the underworld, exemplify the Slavs' interpretation of the natural forces as divine entities. Remember who else interpreted natural forces as divine entities? That's right, animists. While animism sees spirit in every element of nature, paganism begins to personify these spirits into more human-like forms, creating gods and goddesses that embody natural forces. Let's now look at the final evolutions of religion, that being monotheism. Of course, with accordance to the title of this video, I'll be focusing on dead monotheistic religions, starting with the cult of Mithras, or Mithraism. While there is a debate about whether Mithraism was truly a monotheistic religion, it was a mystery religion that centered around the worship of Mithras. This religion was practiced in the Roman Empire from the 1st to the 4th centuries. The religion's tenets and practices are not well understood due to the lack of written records, but it was popular among the Roman military and eventually faded out as Christianity rose to prominence. Worshippers of Mithras had a complex system of 7 grades of initiation and communal ritual meals. Initiates called themselves syndexioi, or those united by the handshake. They met in underground temples now named Mithraea, which survived in large numbers. Mithraism was particularly popular among Roman soldiers, resonating with their values of courage, loyalty, and brotherhood. Moving back in time and to Egypt, Atenism was established during the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Around the year 1400 before Christ, breaking the centuries of traditional Egyptian polytheism, Akhenaten promoted Aten, previously a relatively obscure sun deity, to the status of the sole god. He literally took one obscure sun god from the many gods they believed in for hundreds of years and claimed him alone to be the only god. The most radical aspect of Atenism was its monotheism. Aten was represented as a sun disk emitting rays ending in hands. Aten was seen as the life-giving force, the essence of the sun itself. This deity was considered the source of all existence, transcending the anthropomorphic characteristics of earlier Egyptian gods. But why this sudden and extreme change? Akhenaten, or the guy who basically created the religion, positioned himself as the only intermediary between Aten and the people. He centralized religious practices around himself and his family, significantly altering the religious and political landscape of Egypt. Atenism can be seen as a philosophical shift towards a more simplified and abstract form of religion. The emphasis on a single formless deity reflected a move away from complex narratives from numerous forms of traditional Egyptian gods. After Akhenaten's death, there was a swift return to traditional Egyptian polytheism. I know I'm only supposed to cover dead religions or mythology for this video, but for my last example I will make an exception because this example is just too funny. Cargo cults are religious movements that arose in the South Pacific, particularly during and after World War II, where islanders, upon observing the advanced technology and abundance of goods brought by military forces, developed rituals and built replicas of planes and airstrips in belief that these actions would lead to the delivery of valuable goods, or cargo, from the sky. These cults represented an intersection of traditional beliefs and the islanders' interpretation of and the reaction to modern technology and foreign influence. These movements often had charismatic leaders who claimed to have special insight or connection with the ancestral spirits or other entities they believed responsible for delivering the cargo. These leaders often organized and led the rituals and were considered intermediaries. For example, the John Frum movement is a notable cargo cult that emerged during World War II on Tanna Island, Vanuatu. It centers around the figure of John Frum, a mythical American character who, according to the cult's leader, promised to bring wealth and modern goods, or what they called cargo. Followers of the John Frum movement abandoned traditional customs in favor of new practices in anticipation of John Frum's return, often symbolized by the American flag. In my opinion, the existence of cargo cults is proof that humans will always move towards spirituality when faced with the unknown. So those were all the examples of this video. There are much more examples of interesting mythologies that I would love to cover, so if this video gets 200 likes, I know I'm asking for a lot, but 200 likes, I'll make a part 2 where I'll cover much more mythologies. And you might as well subscribe if you have watched this long. And as always, farewell, żegnam and goodbye.